Welcome to the REAL Autism Podcast. Real as in relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions for a better quality of life. Join your host, Alicia Gosha-Page, for some real conversations. Sponsored by J. Cole Autism Coaching.
All right. So hello to all of my listeners out there. Welcome to another episode of the REAL Autism Podcast, where we talk about relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions. And I am happy today to have Miss Trineene Hall. Welcome, Miss Hall. How are you?
Pretty good. And yourself?
I am doing well. Welcome to the stage, and we are ready to hear about you and the service and what you provide. So share a little bit with us about your background and what led you to do what you do.
Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. First of all, I used to be a music teacher, and for some reason, they always placed me in inner city schools with kids that were at risk. And I used to teach them from Japanese songs to African songs and all this kind of stuff. But for some reason, the teachers would tell the kids to come to my classroom or whatever like that when they were acting up. And I was like, why do they keep bringing these kids in here to me? And then I would do something like music therapy with them. And I was like the popular music teacher type thing. And so I was just like, okay. So then I noticed that I had a classroom full of kids that were autistic or had behavior issues. And then when they had the IEP meetings, I didn't know what was going on. And they said, Miss Hall, we need you in the IEP meeting. I'm like, for what? I'm the music teacher. Why don't you get the other teachers and stuff like that? And so Miss Alicia, I was like, And so I went in the meetings and I sat there and I was like, it seemed like they're blackballing the autistic kids. Something's not right. Let me sit here and listen to what's going on. And so in other words, I'm just want to get the funding and get you in this program, but we don't have the tools or the teachers available who will have the patience or who would actually teach the children properly and be able to deal with the behaviors and to manage them in the classroom. So I sat there and I was like, something's not right about this. So every time when they asked me, so can you come? I thought, yeah, I want to come. And so then all of a sudden, people from different schools would ask me to come to advocate for their child. I was like, yeah, come on, let's do it. And so I would sit there and I would challenge the system and say, wait a minute, this is not right concerning our autistic community. And quote unquote, most of them were Black. And so I was like, no, we're not going to do this. They deserve a fair education. They deserve to be treated as individuals. And so I began to go into that sector. Then I went into sociology. Something happened to my daughter, so I ended up going to counseling. And then I was like, well, I could counsel you, but why are you behaving the way that you're behaving? And so I wanted to get to the root of the issue. So then I developed a company called Holistic Development in Action. And so this right here, I did a lot, Miss Alicia. And so what I did was, and I still have that company today. And so I help companies form houses for behavioral challenging children, like boys' homes and girls' homes. And then I also help develop policies and procedures for CRAs, for DBHDD, in order to help them to house our special needs or our IDD community. And so when I did that, I would go in and like, wait a minute, these clients got behaviors. And they said, Miss Hall, why don't you go to behavior support? You're really good. I was like, oh, you think I am? And they said, yeah, you're really good. And so like 3 years ago, right before, I think it was right before the pandemic, I said, let me put my application in. And so now I am a behavior specialist for DBHDD. And here I am today. And I'm so excited about it. I love doing what I do.
So tell me, so you started out saying you were a music teacher. So was that your background? Is that like what you majored in college?
I majored in college in music, and then I ended up having a shift because something happened to my daughter, and I went into sociology. And then that led me to counseling, and then I went back to behavior support. Yep.
Okay, so you really, it sounds like you just naturally had a love for the population, the autistic community, special needs in general, because you were just drawn to them, and that the parents obviously felt that about you, because then they start inviting said music teacher to the IEP meetings, which is fantastic. So that's just a note for all of our listeners out there that, if you have the passion for a particular area, a particular community like special needs, you can flourish in that, even if you started in some other area. So you mentioned about residential. So like how you got into looking into housing. What made you want to pursue that? Because that's like a hot button for a lot of families that are trying to transition from like the school environment. Now these folks are moving into adulthood, and we always get this question, me as a caregiver of a 22-year-old, is what is her life going to look like? Is she going to always going to continue to live with you? So talk to us a little bit about your experience with helping to create a residential space for special needs.
Okay,
adults.
well, first of all, I helped them get the contracts, from the state, the permits, whatever like that, and then I established the policies. And so within these policies, there are guidelines, and one of the things that I major on is behavior support, intervention strategies, learning their conditions, the symptoms, or whatever like that, and how we're able to help them to gauge where they are, and so that they can be able to operate in their optimal level of functioning. I find that a lot of times that when you're dealing with the special needs community, especially when you have, such as yourself, Miss Alicia, you're so close to your daughter and stuff like that, and it would be hard to, factor in on her actually going to live with someone else. And so it's just a matter of making that home, feasible or, approachable or comfortable for that individual. And one thing that I find out is that a lot of homes, they want the money. I have to be honest. I'm going to be real. And the thing is that they don't do a lot of house matching. And so you put this individual with this individual and this. And so now you have a discrepancy within the home. And the reason why, because there's not a good match. And so what I do is I read over the paperwork or whatever like that, just to see if this is a good match. Now, if the agency is a good agency, they will listen and say, hey, you're right, because we want to make sure that there is melody or harmony within the home. And so they will listen, but some that just don't want to listen, just want the money or whatever like that. And you could tell by the presentation, you could tell by their service to our individuals. And so for families, it is a hard thing to allow your child to go into a home as such, because there are some homes that are good, but there are some homes that are not. I have to be honest with you. And so with all that being said, even when I found a good home and I have to like transition the child and the family into this home, I look at it like this. Your child is going to their own placement. They're going to their own apartment. And so while they're going to their own apartment, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be in their lives. Like my children, I got older children in their 20s. Nobody's gone yet. But when they go, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be in their lives. But it just means that you're on your own and you're able to do some things independently and be able to be around other people in the community, be able to do some things and, and to be able to feel like you have some sense of individuality, or whatever like that. But it's just a matter of finding the right placement, finding the right home, the right match, the right community that will be able to house the individuals and also to provide the adequate services for them.
So is your client the individual with the special needs and maybe their caregiver, and like is there like this list of people that are willing to open up their homes to be a residential space, or is this like really a home with openings where people go and stay?
Well, it's like openings for homes for people to go and stay. And so what I do is that a lot of these homes have lists or whatever like that, and then they kind of like go through the ISP, go through the evaluations and stuff like that, just to see if this is a good match. But for me, what I do is when I actually write the policy procedures that open up the homes or help them open up the homes, whatever like that, I already know what type of individual that they are good with. Because I could tell in their heartstring. I'm a person. I am a good advocate for environments. So I know. I listen to what you're saying. I say you're not good with behaviors. You're not good with autistic children, those that have behaviors, challenge behavior. You're not good with that. So this is not what we're going to do. So this is what I need you to do. And the ones, like I stated, that listen, they are doing well, flourishing, and the ones they're having problems.
Did you have to get special training to be deemed as a company that can go out here and identify these homes, or is this just a business that you grew and said this is what we do?
Well, it was a young lady that helped me out at the very beginning, who was a consultant that showed me the ropes, and a nurse also showed me the ropes as well too. And so I correlated the two and said, hey, I help people and did not get paid. I said, I need to get paid because right there my money a little funny. So I said, well, let me do this. And so that I opened up the company, and that's where I started. And I was just like, okay, and I grew this company, and I don't do as much as I used to do now because I'm doing more behavior support type stuff. I go into the homes type thing, but outside of that, I am still advocating on that spectrum. So, yeah.
So it's funny that you bring up behavioral support. You're doing a little bit more about that. Talk to the audience about what does that really mean? What's behavioral support? What's a typical day like when you service people that need this type of support?
You really want to know?
What we call this podcast? We call it the Real Autism Podcast.
Y'all want to know the real deal?
I want to know the real deal.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the real deal. With behavior support, okay, you're dealing with individuals with dual disorders. Most of them have like a mental health diagnosis, such as autism, traumatic brain disorders. You have mood disorders. You have ADHD, all that kind of stuff. Intermittent explosive disorders, bipolar disorders, and then you have your DD side, your IDD side, which is your they have like developmental disabilities and stuff like that, Down syndrome and all that kind of stuff, that you have a dual disorder. And so with that, you have them on the autistic spectrum or any other spectrum, and they have challenging behaviors such as physical aggression, property destruction, self-injurious behavior. You have inappropriate touching, elopement issues, pica. You have stealing, food-seeking behaviors. All this stuff, that we deal with when it comes down to behavior support. I am a behavior support specialist, so that means that I get to go in, do the observation, do the functional behavior assessment, and then what I do is I watch the individual, then I kind of like formulate the behavior support plan. Okay, it takes me up to 30 days to write the plan, and then I train the staff, train the caregivers, but it's not a conclusive plan. And so what I do is, a lot of people are like, my plan is like, it's the ultimate plan. Oh, no, it's not. And the reason why, because we are family, we are partners, we are a team. So if something worked for you, and I say, hey, if it worked, I think it works. And so let's put it in the behavior support plan, because we need all hands on deck in order to help gauge this behavior support plan to help this individual. And so in my finding, I have over 100 clients. And so I have like some that are like, okay, I know they're going to have some challenging behaviors. I barely hear from them, but there are some that they may call me every single day. I know they're going to call at 5 o'clock. I know they're going to call at 2 o'clock. It used to be a time, y'all, when I didn't know boundaries. I didn't know no boundaries. I care for my clients. I love my clients. Believe me, I do. And so every night, this specific client would call me around about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, what are you calling me at 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning? What's going on? So here I go, superhero of the day. Okay, here go Miss Hall, put her cape on, looking like crap with a bonnet on her head. So I'm asking, hello, Miss Hall, can we go on Zoom? Excuse me, we got your Zoom link. We kept it in our phone. I'm sitting there like, I don't look the part, but go ahead and get on the phone. So all of a sudden, they're up there going off or whatever like that, and I come on the phone. I say, hey, and I start saying what I say or whatever, and then they calm down. And my clients do that. When they don't get on the scale and stuff, they call me, Miss Hall, can you help? They won't get on the scale. I get on the scale. Okay, Miss Hall. I'm like, oh, Miss Hall, how you do that? I don't know. I just got that tone, that voice.
You got the it factor.
I don't know. And that some of it don't work for some of them. But anyway, and so I was like, okay. And it got to the point that it was so much that you were dependent on me, but you did not incorporate the plan. What is the plan? What is the strategy? What did I teach you? Because we have to be consistent in this plan. And so one night they woke me up at 1:00. And guess what I did?
You know, I know you talk about the plan. So I'm on Instagram quite a bit, and I see a lot of people in the autism community, a lot of moms, and I'm seeing a lot more people share their experiences when they have someone with severe behaviors.
Yes.
And kind of the feedback that I get is, okay, yeah, we see all these other moms on Instagram and their child is on the spectrum doing so great and doing, you know, all of these wonderful, easy things, but we want you to see this side of the fence where we got all of these behaviors. And so I think sometimes we produce this plan, but for me as a caregiver, when, you know, you are the chef, you are the administrative assistant, you are the house cleaner, you work a job, sometimes you just feel overwhelmed trying to execute on that plan, and you feel a little helpless because you're doing the plan, but you're not necessarily seeing what you deem as the progress. So what encouragement can you give to caregivers who are dealing with severe behaviors? They're being asked to execute this plan, and they just feel just helpless.
Yeah, it's just a matter of being patient. You have to be patient. The individual did not develop that behavior overnight. It took some time. And the thing is that it's going to take time. It's going to take consistency. You know, it's going to take routine or whatever like that. And like I stated before, with the individual, that was a severe case, right? And then I had to train that night at 1:00 in the morning. But at the end of the day, it came down to routine, and the family was overwhelmed. They were overstimulated because the behaviors were so bad. But I would tell you, you know, to be patient, be patient and have a consistent routine. And then guess what? You have to have time for yourself, for self-care. And a lot of times, I don't want to leave my baby. Leave your baby, especially if it's someone that you really trust. And a lot of times, can I really be candid and real, for real? A lot of our community don't know about the different resources, the different things, or the different terminologies, or the acronyms. And because when I started saying the acronyms, they were like, "What is that, Miss Hall? Wait a minute, has nobody schooled you on this? You know, you don't have to do this alone. You know, we have, you know, CLS staff, which is community living supports, you know, that come in the home to help out, you know, but you got to find the right staff though. You know, we have CAI, which is community access individual. They come in the home and take the individual out. You know, then you have in-home respite. You get to go on your trip to Jamaica, get your groove back, and then that person come in your house and let you go get your groove back or whatever that you do. You know, they have out of the home respite where they go to a place, you know, in order to do that. You have to have self-care. You have to have time for yourself. And I find that a lot of times, even with you, Miss Alicia, it's almost like, you know, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. I got to be there, you know, when Miss Hall, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, no, you don't have to be here. Let me see the staff. They're okay in my mind, but I know your plight because you love your daughter and you want to make sure that you give her the adequate care. But sometimes you have to, or parents, you have to be able to say, hey, I got to release them just for a few moments so I can get my mind together. Because if you don't get your mind together, you don't get your self-care, you're going to get overwhelmed, and then you're going to be the one sick. You're going to be the one frustrated, and then you're not going to be able to execute the plan. And even in executing the plan, guess what? Can I tell you something? Nobody follows the plan 100%. And sometimes it's okay not to follow the plan. Because sometimes in the plan, Miss Alicia, you know, when you're in a moment, I'm not going to think about that, but this might work today. You know what I'm saying? You got to be willing to adapt to different changes and do different methods as deemed necessary. And then if that works, and then you tell your specialist or whomever's working with you, hey, this works. All right. And that person should be able to be acceptable of what you're saying and be able to incorporate, because we're a team. You know, you have to have time, whereas you take care of you. You cannot be a superhero for your child or the individual that you may service, and you are a villain to yourself. You know, and
You got to put the oxygen mask on you.
no,
That's the best example I can give. You got to put the oxygen mask
and
on you first before you can put it on somebody else. So I'm definitely a believer in that. So for a parent who is seeing these behaviors and and they just really don't know where to go, like, how do they go find a behavioral support specialist? Like, what resources are out there? What would be the first steps that you would recommend to somebody that's saying, these behaviors are just out of control. They can't control them at school. I can't control them at home. What do I do next?
yeah, a lot of times people would say medicate them, and that's the only thing they talk about. But the whole thing is that you have to get a psychological evaluation. That's what I tell people. Have you got a psychological evaluation? So we can see what we're dealing with. So we can see what's going on with the individual or whatever like that. And then if they're younger, under 21 years of age, you have ABA therapy. You get with DBHDD, your schools should be a good advocate for that. When you have your IEP meetings and stuff like that, what are the recommendations, far as how can we get in the system in order to get the funding or the waivers in order to get this ABA therapy for the individual. Okay. And so if they're younger like that, being able to go through counseling and going through occupational therapies and different things like that, speech, and because there are different factors as to why the individual may behave in that behavior. And then you want to, if they're a little bit older, that's when you do your evaluations and stuff like that. And then you go to DBHDD, and then you actually go to your field office, whichever region that you're in. We have 6 different regions, and then you go to your field office, and then you actually fill out the documentation. It takes a long time, but you have to just be patient. A lot of times we don't want to be patient. We were like, oh, they just taking too long. No, stay in there, because believe me, you're going to get it. And then once they do that, and you let them know. And one thing I noticed too, Miss Alicia, is that when people are actually getting the support and help, they don't want to tell everything that's going on with their child. And the reason why, because it makes them look like that they're not a good parent or a good caregiver or something like that. No, you tell them everything that's going on with their child, the good, the bad, the ugly, and so that you can get the support that you need for that child. And then that's when they make the recommendation, hey, we're going to do a CAPS or a behavioral assessment or whatever like that. And then they give you a list of behavior support specialists in order to help your child. Okay. And then there are other resources, I got it written down here. As far as that, you can go to, far as different webinars and workshops that they have in your area and stuff like that. Association for Behavioral Analysis, International, ABAI. And so those are some things that you can do in order to help as well. And then they have different specialists in your area or whatever like that will be able to help or whatever to chime in. You can even go to support groups, such as what Miss Alicia is doing right now. There are different support groups for our individuals that have specialists that actually run those programs or have you or maybe be instrumental in the program in order to help to give a solution-based focus approach or a cognitive behavior approach in order to help the individual. And so we just want to make sure that we know those resources and that you'll be able to know that there is help available, that you don't have to do it alone. And a lot of times people wait too late. I say you chime in when they're younger. A lot of times we want to chime in when they're like 21, 22, and 23 years old. By then, they already set their stage. They already set how they're going to be. They know how you're going to move. They know how it's going to, how life is. And so they're going to manipulate the situation. Start when they're young. When you start seeing them fall out on the floor, we know it's terrible twos, but it goes beyond terrible twos. When you see them rolling on the floor, they're hollering and screaming, banging their head and throwing items, and it's hard to get them to calm down, and they flapping and they're stimming and type stuff, where they hitting you and they kicking people, or they're just sitting there, playing in their private areas, taking off their clothes and stuff like that. Those are some things that you need to be aware of, when they're younger, and so that they can get that ABA therapy and get the help that they need, or whatever. You just think, oh, they're just bad, let me just beat. That's why you want to beat them or whatever like that, But there are some things that that can be challenging to them that they don't understand, especially if they are nonverbal. And that's when your speech pathologists come in, and we let the kids or the older individuals use the tablets and stuff like that to listen to the music. Why can't we invest in programming in order to put it on their device in order to help them to communicate? And so there are different things that we can do that we do not buy into, because, or we don't know where to go. Go to the speech pathologist. I told him, hey, no, you can't afford it. All right, let me give you these cue cards first, and we're going to work on this. And then once we do that, then we're going to go to your support coordinator or your caseworker, and we're going to see if we can get you in there with the speech pathologist to get your child a device, especially those that can't afford different things. Okay. And so there is help available. There are specialists just like myself who cares about the community that will go the extra mile to make sure that they have. Okay. But it's just a matter of finding that specialist that would care about that. Yeah.
So can you give us an example? Because there are a lot of people who aren't in our shoes, whether they're an allied professional like you or whether they're a caregiver like me. They have no clue when we say behaviors, what that means. Of course, respecting the privacy of a client that you have, not asking for names, but can you give us an example, kind of like the good, the bad, the ugly of some behaviors you've seen and the effect it has on the family dynamics?
Oh, Lord. You're talking about one individual I walked in the house and I thought it was a war zone. He engaged in property destruction. What is that? Breaking doors, breaking glass, throwing items, busting holes in walls, putting dents in the car by banging on the car or whatever like that. And so when I came into home, I was like, oh my God, glass was everywhere. And the mom was just so scared and didn't know what to do. So there are a lot of families that are scared, that are in a place of fear and of their individual because they don't know what they're going to do. And so when I went upstairs, I said, oh my God. And he busted the banister off the staircase. So when you walked upstairs, you had to put your hand on the stairs just to make sure, or on the wall, make sure you don't fall down off the thing. When I got upstairs, he had busted the banister off the top part. So if I would have took one step, I would have fell right down into their living room. And so you got the families that are seeing all of this, can't do anything because this is what it is. Then you have some that are physically aggressive. In other words, they kick, they hit, they punch, they slap the families. And one in particular, he's autistic, he's nonverbal. His mother is scared of him. She can't even sleep at night. She has to lock her door at night in her room. If she's sitting there, sometimes he just walk past her. She think that he's okay, and he pulls her hair, and she's like maybe like 100 and maybe 30 pounds, and he's like maybe about 212, maybe 6'4", 6'3". And there's a lot of families that are living in fear. There are some that even bam their head on the wall, and they get upset about something because they can't have attention or have a tangible or something like that. They start bamming their head on the walls, punching on themselves, scratching on themselves, pulling their hair or whatever like that. And so a lot of them have to wear helmets or wear like safety mitts on their hands or whatever like that. And the fear of it is if he bammed their head, if they bam their head that one time, it may be their last time. I remember a client, Miss Alicia, she ended up going to jail, and she ended up going to somebody else, because they kind of like finesse and got her with someone else. But she ended up going to jail. She had self-injurious behavior, and the jail did not care. And when you're dealing with self-injurious behavior, you have to have like pads on your wall, making sure that, everything is safeguarded. But she was in jail. She hit her head that one time in that jail. Do you know she died? She died from that. And so the fear of it is are they going to do this one thing and it's going to kill them? So that's what the family is living in fear, like, oh, you know. Then you have some that have inappropriate sexual behaviors. You know, they masturbate. You know, and it's okay if they masturbate in their own confinement. But there are some that masturbate wherever they go, take their clothes off, butt naked, just running down the street. You have some that have elopement issues that you don't even know where they're going to go. Some people have like all these locks on their doors, and you know, you have your cameras and stuff like that, your bells on your doors, and that's what I tell them, whatever like that. And now we got that we're in fear because we don't know if they're going to leave out the house or not. And the reason why is because I got one, all he wants is a soda. And so in his mind, he recant the store where he went to last. And he know where the store is. And so he'll find the store. And so I'm going to leave out. You don't give me that Sprite, I'm going to get me a Sprite. And so you got the elopement issues and stuff. So you don't know when, you know, they're going to leave your sight, or if they're going to run off, or if they're in the store and they have these behaviors and hitting and kicking and stuff like that. Do you know people in our community don't care nothing about you being special needs? They will beat the crap out of you and care less about it. They don't care about that. Or if you're in the store and they're in behaviors, falling on the floor, and you're trying to grab them and get them up and all kinds of stuff. And people have gotten abuse cases. They called the cops on them saying that they were abusing the individual. And all they were doing was trying to help the individual to get up so they would not hurt themselves or hurt someone else.
And the reason I asked that a question, just so my audience knows, it's not to paint a picture, because people hear the negative things and that's all they hear. What I'm trying to paint the picture is that this is a spectrum, and we can go from severe to mild, but this is some of the things that people encounter. And it's not to say that, oh, now when you meet an autistic individual, you are to think that they all have behavior issues, or because that's not the case. A lot of times there is, you know, where I find is where that behavior is, underneath that is some pain. They're upset about something. They're hurt about something. For example, Coleman, I can see him get more aggressive when he's unable to verbalize what it is that he wants. So the aggression a lot of times means something. Sometimes you do have to seek medication so that you're in a place to help guide them and coach them. Jasmine was severely aggressive. She was on Risperdal, which is a common drug they use for kids on the spectrum. She no longer is on that because we instituted behavior modification, ABA, parent intervention, to the point where we were able to taper it off. So I want my caregivers out there that are dealing with severe behaviors to realize it's not a death sentence. It's about seeking the help that you need. And it's like with any other person that's neurotypical. When your kids might have been small and you came around and it was other people around, they might try to show out and clown you. But when you weren't around, they were perfectly fine. And so I see that person, that behavior specialist, coming in and being able to provide that intermediary type support in between the individual and the caregiver themselves. So there is hope. Just get the help that you need, but you need to understand, you know, that it is a level of progression.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm getting touched. I'm not gonna lie, I'm passionate about that. And then I also had Miss Alicia, some individuals that no longer need the behavior support plan. I had to downsize to just a crisis plan, and then after a year, they're gonna be off of it completely. And when I say that is that it came from one individual. I had to do like counseling with them. It went outside of behavior support. You know, and I did some counseling with them and their family. And then, you know, it's to now they're working a job and everything like that. because it's consistency and routine, and teaching them how, if the routine is broken, what to do next. And so it's just a matter. I have had some success stories, and outside of that, if they have an issue or something like that, that doesn't mean that they're all bad, because they still have a strength. I always major on their strength as well. What is their strength? And you always give them positive reinforcement, and you celebrate the small victories. Don't just look at the bad. Celebrate the small victories. When you ask them to do something and you give them a verbal prompt 2 or 3 times and they actually do it, that's a small victory, because they could keep on going on. You have to call crisis, or you have to call 911. Celebrate the small victories that the individuals may have, or whatever like that, and being able to understand the triggers. A lot of times we don't understand the trigger points, of what are the stimuli that causes them to engage in the behaviors in the first place. And a lot of times we don't even know that. And so we can be proactive instead of reactive. Okay. And, knowing the precursors, knowing when their face drop, knowing when their body begin to rock a certain way, knowing when their hands start doing a certain thing, or that's when you start moving in and knowing what to do, in the middle of it. Sometimes it's plain ignoring. I'm just going to ignore the situation and then I'll come back to it later, and then sometimes I'm just using reflective listening. I'm listening to you and then I'm giving you back what you just stated to me. Then sometimes you use distracting self activities. What are some of the preferred activities that they like to do in order to counteract, the behavior or what have you? Sometimes you have to do sensory diets, stuff just that deals with the taste, the hearing, the sight, the feeling, the touch, pressure, compression, and all that kind of stuff, and texture, textile balls and stress balls and different stuff like that. Changing the scenery, let's go to the park. Let's go over here to this room or what have you. Let's look at this, changing the scenery in order to help the individual to be able to cope with everyday stressors, because they do too. Come on, let's do some breathing exercise. One individual that I have, we have lunch every other Friday on the phone, because he's like a little, he have a really weak immune system. And so he can't really be around a lot of people all the time. And so I do like a lunch with him. I have my lunch, he have his lunch, and we do it every other week, and we talk on the phone and stuff like that. Yeah, and then one of our highlights of our meeting is he give me jokes, and I give him jokes, and we be up there, and then I start singing a song, like someone, like for me, like somebody got to be creative, and so I told them that they said the young lady didn't want to brush her teeth or something like that. Okay, do y'all know that song? Where those fans at? Where them fans at? And so they was like, Miss Hall, come on there. I said, you gotta be creative now. I said, get that toothbrush, or where that toothbrush at? Smack, smack, smack.
Not where the toothbrush at.
Oh, got my boot. And I said, you never know how it, especially when they like music anyway. Turn it on, have a look, have it ready right on the thing. Hey, let's go. Brush our teeth.
So wait, did they brush their teeth after
of course. I'm just as goofy as they come. I know they be like, Miss Hall, come on. I have a Spanish thing, and they be trying to understand me sometimes. And I be like, I said, okay, so let's do this. I said, hello, and how are you? Hello, and how are you? And get down, and get down, and get down, and get down, and they get down. And hello, and how are you? And I said, hola, ¿cómo estás? Hola, ¿cómo estás? Bate, 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 bate. Hola, ¿cómo estás? And they were like, oh, Miss Hall, yeah. Sit down already. You know what I'm saying?
So you pretty much used the strategy of redirecting. You redirected them, and you distracted them for what might have been a negative behavior that was about to ensue, but you distracted them with something else. That's a strategy. And that just goes to show to the listeners out there that strategies can be fun. You don't have to feel all stressed and pressed to implement these strategies. We make up songs too to do things. So you just have to be creative. You have to be patient, and you have to give yourself grace when you're dealing with these things. And I would say, this is unsolicited advice for you, Ms. Hall, but you should consider doing like, and maybe you are, I don't know, like a monthly meetup, create a community where people can like dial in and you have conversations like this. Because I think you have the talent and the gift to calm caregivers down in this place and give them hope and understand at the same time. So you should consider creating this digital community where you bring caregivers together, and you're not necessarily going to be their behavior specialist per se, because I know you have you're stacked when it comes to clients, but you're just sharing your experiences. Because what I find in being a storyteller myself is that your experience can help people go a lot further than some of the other conversations they had. The one day that I had someone say to me that I learned more from you in 30 minutes than I have in this 5 years that I've been dealing with my son is what encouraged me to do things like this, to do the podcast, to do J. Cole Autism Coaching, to do AGP organizational coaching, because I'm able to share proven strategies that I've been through myself. So you should consider doing the same thing.
Okay, I will. And I have something that I use for my church. It's called Mindset Camp. And I give like advice, but I haven't gotten to the point of, like you said, stating collaborating with them and support group. I give information, but it's just not, them being able to ask me questions stuff, and I will consider that. I see it in my head.
Yeah, that's your gift. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I'm going to tell you, you have been one of the most real guests that I've had on the Real Autism Podcast, where we share relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions. And I want to thank you for coming to the stage and just sharing a part of you that you're passionate about. You're passionate about your community. And I want to say a personal thank you to you for supporting my family as well. We couldn't do it without you. Jasmine started out rough, and look at her now. She has her days now. She'll try you. Don't get it twisted.
My girl,
but overall, she's with your help, we've been able to institute some calmness when it comes to her behavior. So I appreciate you, and I thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, listeners, we'll see you next time for the next episode of the Real Autism Podcast. Stay blessed.
Yes.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Real Autism Podcast with Alicia Gosha-Page. We'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this episode: J. Cole Autism Coaching, helping caregivers navigate to a better quality of life; AGP Organizational Coaching, helping people develop effective strategies, systems, and solutions to organize information. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or just visit us at jcoleadvocacy.com.